Have you ever heard about Flight 739, a plane that disappeared into thin air with 16 people on board and was never seen again? No wreckage, no crash site, not even a single piece of debris. This is one of the greatest aviation mysteries of all time. And while there are many theories about what could have caused this plane to vanish without a trace, none of them can truly explain what happened to Flight 739. On May 1949, a small passenger plane known as a Lodestar left Belém Airport near Brussels for a routine flight to Lisbon in Portugal. There were 16 people on board, including passengers and crew. They flew over France, Spain, and into the waters of the Mediterranean Sea, where radar contact was lost and the plane was never seen again. What happened to the crew of Flight 739? And why did it vanish without a trace? Let's find out. Before we get into the details of this mystery, let's take a closer look at the aircraft involved. The Lodestar was a twin-engine transport plane designed by the Dutch company. It had a wingspan of 104 feet and a length of 63 feet. The plane was powered by two Pratt & Whitney radial engines, which could reach speeds of up to 260 miles per hour. It had a range of 2,200 miles and was considered to be a reliable and safe aircraft. When Flight 739 took off from Belém Airport, it was being piloted by Captain Robert Morgan. He was an experienced pilot with over 8,000 hours of flight time. His co-pilot was 34-year-old John Besh. The passengers on board were a mix of businessmen, tourists, and soldiers returning home from their posts. As the plane flew over southern France, the pilots contacted Marseille Airport to inform them of their position and to ask for navigational instructions. The airport staff provided the pilots with the necessary information, and the plane continued on its route. But shortly after, the pilots contacted Lyon Airport and requested permission to descend from 17,000 feet to 7,000 feet. As the plane began its descent, the weather conditions outside became increasingly stormy. The pilots reported heavy rain and turbulence as they prepared to land in Lisbon. At 6:45 p.m., the pilots of Flight 739 informed Marseille Airport that they were approaching their destination and expected to land in approximately 30 minutes. However, due to poor weather conditions, the pilots requested a delay in their landing until the storm subsided. At 7:25 p.m., the pilots contacted Lisbon Airport to inform them of their situation and asked for updated weather conditions. In response, Lisbon Airport advised the pilots that the weather conditions had improved and that they could expect clear skies upon arrival. The pilots of Flight 739 thanked the airport staff for the information and continued on their route towards Lisbon. At this point, air traffic controllers lost contact with Flight 739. The last known position of the plane was approximately 120 miles southwest of the Azores Islands. No distress call was received from the pilots, and no attempt was made to contact nearby airports. Air traffic controllers tried to contact the plane several times, but there was no response. As the night wore on, the lack of communication from Flight 739 became increasingly concerning. Air traffic controllers attempted to establish contact with the plane, but there was no response. At 10:30 p.m., a search and rescue operation was launched to locate the missing plane. The Portuguese Air Force dispatched 3 search aircraft to the area where the plane was last known to be flying. However, despite an extensive search, no sign of the plane or any of the people on board was found. The following day, the search continued with the assistance of ships and aircraft from neighboring countries. But as the hours turned into days and the days turned into weeks, hope began to fade that the crew of Flight 739 would be found alive. The search was eventually called off with no answers and no closure for the families of those on board. As news of the disappearance of Flight 739 spread, panic began to spread among the families and friends of those on board. Many people began to speculate about what could have happened to the plane and its crew. Some believed that the plane had crashed into the sea, while others believed that it had been hijacked. The lack of information only fueled the rumors and conspiracy theories, and the families of those on board were desperate for answers. Numerous theories were proposed to explain the disappearance of Flight 739. Some suggested that the plane had crashed into the sea due to bad weather or mechanical failure. Others believed that the plane had been hijacked, or that it had been used as a drug mule carrying a shipment of narcotics. One of the most popular theories was that the plane had been shot down by a Soviet fighter jet. At the time, the Cold War was heating up, and there was a lot of tension between the United States and the Soviet Union. Some people believed that the Soviets had mistaken the plane for a U.S. spy plane and shot it down. While the theories surrounding the disappearance of Flight 739 were numerous, it's important to remember that behind the mystery was a human tragedy. The plane was carrying 16 people, each with their own story and loved ones waiting for their return. The impact that the disappearance of Flight 739 had on the families and friends of those on board was devastating. To this day, the families continue to search for answers and closure. The disappearance of Flight 739 had a significant impact on the aviation industry. The lack of answers raised questions about safety standards and protocols. Investigations into the accident revealed some deficiencies in the air traffic control system of the time. These deficiencies were addressed to prevent similar accidents from occurring in the future. Additionally, the accident led to calls for improved international cooperation in the event of a missing aircraft. At the time, the search and rescue operations were hampered by the lack of communication and coordination between the various countries involved. Unanswered questions. Despite numerous investigations and theories, the disappearance of Flight 739 remains a mystery to this day. There are still many unanswered questions surrounding the accident. What caused the plane to go off course? Did the plane crash into the sea, or did it land somewhere undetected? What happened to the crew and passengers? Unfortunately, these questions may never be answered. Closing call to action. The disappearance of Flight 739 is a tragic reminder of the unforgiving nature of the skies. While we may never know exactly what happened to the crew and passengers of Flight 739, we can honor their memory by working to improve air safety and promote international cooperation in search and rescue operations. If you're interested in learning more about the accident, we encourage you to do your own research and explore the various theories and investigations that have been conducted. You can also pay your respects to the victims of the accident and their families by leaving a comment below. What are your thoughts on the case? Have you ever experienced anything similar? We would love to hear your story. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.